Hey guys, welcome back. We're going to continue our look at digestion by focusing specifically on the human digestive system, again, in a means to compare it to the systems of other animals. We want to be comparative when we think about these things. So, what's the overall process here? Well, it allows the body to get nutrients and energy from the food you eat, breaking it down with organs all along the way. You can follow the kind of blinking, bouncing ball through the digestive system here in the animation, and you can see that basically this is our um, one-way digestive process, right? We go from the mouth all the way through the digestive tract and ultimately excreted out the anus, so one-way path. Um, Basically, mouth, esophagus, stomach, small intestine, large intestine. Those would be the major organs that are going to be working on food as it passes through your digestive system. So this little bit of food we call a bolus, and it moves through your digestive system all along the way on that one-way track. Uh, we'll start with some structures here. Again, we want to look at how do each of these structures, how are they're put together? How are they specialized to allow them to do what they do, which is their function? So think about it. The mouth. Its function is to break down solid food, make it mushy and easy to swallow. That's mechanical digestion. It also is going to be able to create uh, saliva, and saliva has salivary amylase, and that amylase is an enzyme that is going to break down food uh, into digestible macronutrients, carbohydrates, fats, break them down. So looking at our structure, we're up here. Obviously, we can look at structure mouth. Or structure A is the mouth right here. That's what we're looking for. Okay, so when you're looking at your diagrams, we know that this is going to be the mouth. We know it's specialized in this way, and we know that this is its function. So moving on to the next, um, moving on to the next slide, we're going to take a look at the esophagus. All right, the esophagus is a long muscular tube. Its basic goal is to take food from the mouth and bring it to the stomach, and you can see that happening in this animation here. All along the way, you should see this kind of pulsating walls here of the esophagus, which is muscular contractions. So it's lined with muscles, it's strong, and it pulls food down towards your stomach. The epiglottis is at the top. Epiglottis we'll talk a little bit later in respiratory, but you can see as this animation recycles back to the start, that the epiglottis is going to flip down right there to keep food from going that way into your lungs. Um, so that's really its basic function. So you can see here that basically the structure C is the esophagus. We would mark that up on our diagrams so we know exactly where the esophagus is located in the human digestive system. So moving on to the next one, we're going to take a look at the stomach. Now the stomach is obviously the part of digestion everybody knows about, but we don't necessarily understand all the specializations, the form that it needs to take in order to do its job. So our stomach is going to be D, all right here. And we can outline the stomach all the way through. A lot of people look at this diagram and be like, "Oh, J is the stomach." Well, look at the esophagus; goes right to it. Nope, that's the liver. We'll get to that in a moment. So, what does the stomach do? Well, we know it helps to break food down and store food. All right. So, its also job is to release food to the intestines to allow for digestion to occur. Remember, this is breaking food down. You're still not getting energy from this food at this point. We're all in the process of breaking it down through chemical digestion using acid and enzymes, and mechanical digestion to squeeze it. So the stomach has rugae, which are folds that allow for the stomach to expand, for you to hold a little more. They have pyloric valves, these little valve muscles called sphincters, and basically they'll regulate food into the small intestine. And you can see that right here highlighted at the bottom of the stomach. And then the beginning of the small intestine is next, which is coming next. So part of the breaking of food down is physical or mechanical, basically the squeezing, contracting, mixing process. And then a lot of what's going on in the stomach too is the stomach acid, which is chemical digestion, which is happening from the stomach acid itself with that low pH, that acidic environment. So moving on to the next organ here, we're going to take a look at the liver and gallbladder. We kind of put those on the same slide here because they're very related in what they do. Basically, its function is an accessory organ. So we say accessory organ when the food itself is not actually going through these organs, but these organs are contributing to digestion. So it's important to understand what they do. That's what we mean by accessory organ in this case. All right. Highlighting the liver and gallbladder. Remember, accessory organs, both of them. The liver is J. All right. And that's this big structure here. It's made of multiple lobes. And then we have our gallbladder, which I can put in red, and it's highlighted right here. Let's see. Looks like K is pointed directly at this structure right there. Okay. So in this diagram, the gallbladder is really tiny and tucked up underneath the liver, and that's how it is in real life, essentially. So what's the function here? Well, the liver helps to filter out waste and create bile. The bile is then stored in this gallbladder and released into the small intestine. So the bile has this function of kind of storage and release, and the liver has this function of creating this bile that helps to digest fats. So really, here's a function of the gallbladder on these points here. And then remember, it's located in the liver. How is this highly adapted? Well, it's got function for storage. It's got the hepatic artery and portal vein to transport blood to get into the liver so that it can make this bile. Okay, moving on to the next one. The next structure here is the pancreas. The pancreas is near the gallbladder, and it kind of shares a duct in order to dump these enzymes into the small intestine, like we talked about with bile. The pancreas on this diagram is tucked way in the back and hard to see, but it is L right there, and it's just kind of behind the stomach here and wraps underneath. So you kind of see the structure back there. That's the pancreas. And basically its job is to create enzymes to aid in digestion. It's also, again, an accessory organ. It's specialized because it shares kind of duct work. It creates enzymes. So this kind of pancreatic duct and bile duct are kind of come together, and they produce a variety of enzymes to break down food. So that's really how they operate. The small intestine is kind of next. So after the stomach, the food goes in the small intestine. The liver, gallbladder, pancreas, all being accessories to digestion, are going to start dumping in these enzymes right in the small intestine, and this is where we get nutrients. This is where it all happens here. So when we're looking at the small intestine, the stomach goes here, and then it kind of hides behind the large intestine, but you can kind of see that basically the small intestine is all the structure inside here, all wrapped around in this big maze. All right. So looking at the small intestine, E in this case, that's where it goes first. Okay. After the stomach, it gets into this maze of intestine. This is the longest intestine. 80% of ingested water is absorbed. Nearly all your nutrients, like 90+% of the nutrients you eat, get absorbed there. Vitamins, minerals. This is where it all happens. How does it happen? Well, there's a lot of things going on. There's enzymes breaking food down, but the villi are the really cool, highly specialized structures that allowed for nutrient absorption. So we're kind of showing you how this works through these side walls here. But basically, villi are like these finger-like projections, and you can see they kind of stand up off the side walls, and they absorb nutrients and then push it into the capillaries of the bloodstream. So the nutrients are the green stuff here, and this is how they get into your bloodstream this way. Even on, if you look, the cells themselves, these microvilli, they're even smaller little projections, and the whole idea is to increase the surface area for absorption. That's really key, is increase in surface area. So the more surface area, the more nutrients can be absorbed in a smaller amount of overall space. The large intestine is the last thing we'll look at. The large intestine is a fine one. So after the small intestine, food goes through the small intestine, wraps all the way around this. We get to the large intestine, which is going to be marked on here as F. And you can kind of see the large intestine. We move through the large intestine, and then out the colon and out the anus, and that's the final end here. What's its basic function is to take indigestible material and get ready to excrete it. That's essentially what it's doing. It can absorb water, it can absorb vitamins. It does these things too, but at this point, most of the nutrients themselves are out. All right. The large diameter, highly specialized to allow like more solid waste to form, essentially. And so it's got to be a little bit bigger to allow that to pass through, and that's pretty much its key characteristic in how it's able to get its job done as food moves through the digestive system here. So hopefully we understand the overall process of digestion, and we're able to compare this to the other organisms that we've been studying in class.